Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Script. I am your host, Isaac Paul. We're going to go ahead and get right to it. I always like to begin with a little bit of an introduction. For those of you all that do not know, once again, my name is Isaac Paul, and I am the creator and the host of The Tequila Tales. The Tequila Tales is a fully engaging and highly interactive discussion on love and relationships. What it is not is a panel discussion, right? I always say that just so that you all can know what differentiates us from some of our counterparts. With panel discussions, it's about hearing how everybody else feels. With the Tequila Tales, we are an active sport, right? Like it's a contact sport. So our motto is with love, we all have a story to tell. And so our goal is to get those stories, those authentic stories out of the individuals that attend our live shows. We've been doing it for about 11 years, and it has been incredibly fantastic. It's absolutely been a pleasure. Just having an opportunity to not only do something that provides a lot of value to people, but provides a lot of value to us. You know, just being in a room full of like-minded individuals that are incredibly diverse, and just sharing what makes them them. Okay. My role as the host is, it's not only to facilitate the discussion, but it's also to play devil's advocate. So I always say, if it becomes too kumbaya in this room, I will play devil's advocate. And oftentimes I am playing devil's advocate, but in recent years, I haven't had to because the room kind of polices itself. Now, what you're watching now is the script, which is kind of our extension, our collaboration with blackdoctor.org. I've was very, very excited to be able to collaborate with them because what better, organization to kind of align ourselves with than an organization that's all about the health of Black and brown people, right? And when you think about what the Tequila Tales is, essentially what we're talking about is love and relationships and our emotional health. And so I thought that this was just going to be an amazing collaboration. They've given me a lot of room to kind of figure this space out. So from week to week, we're trying different things. The past couple of weeks, I've had on a few guests. And in this particular week, I have a very, very, very special guest, probably the most special guest that I've had up to this point and will ever have for a myriad of different reasons. Okay. So without further ado, I am going to bring on my co-host, who is also my wife, Casey Alana Austin. Right. And since we live in the same house, right, it didn't make a lot of sense for us to, be in two different rooms. Like normally I'm speaking to people virtually, but I figured it would be dope to have you on as a guest. So thank you, for taking an opportunity to kind of vibe out with me. Now, full transparency, right? I probably would have had Casey on as a guest in times past, but there's a reason as to why today was so ideal, because I have the most incredible babysitter who is also my mother-in-law, Casey's mother. And so, because of the fact that one of us doesn't have to tend to our child, I was like, yo, what better day to have Casey on as my co-host. So welcome.
Thank you.
Oh,
That was a
absolutely.
really great introduction.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
it's like the best guest you'll ever have. I was feeling that.
Right. So listen, you guys, just FYI, this is being broadcast through several different channels, right? We're on blackdoctor.org, we're on YouTube, we're also on Tequila Tales, we're also on my personal page. So regardless of where you are or how many people is in the room, when you comment, I can actually see the comments, right? And so I want you all to go ahead and feel free to interact with us because, bam, you see, Gerard, what's happening, right? So when you all communicate with us, we not only have an opportunity to communicate back, but I can pin the comments and I'll check this out. Here you go, Casey. She done already watching from Arizona, whereas everyone else, right? Yeah. So I want you all to know that, this can be as interactive as possible, even though we're going to engage in a discussion. I want to get you guys involved also. So if you all have any questions, any comments, feel free to share them with us. But with that being said, I figure we dive right in because I've got a couple of clips from this most recent show that we've had. So the most recent show that we had was called Free Game. And it was in the spirit of Juneteenth. I thought that, for those of you all that don't know what Juneteenth is, I don't know how, right? But we always try to make our topics relevant to things that are going on currently, and what bigger thing is happening right now than Juneteenth, which has so much historical relevance for Black and brown people, specifically Black people in America. But we didn't want to be totally on the nose, and so what we did was we used that as a theme to more or less, it was kind of like a liberation theme where we're talking about freedom as a whole, right? But before we just jump into it, I kind of want to just take a moment to even talk about like the event as a whole, right? So like, how did you feel about the way that this last event went down?
Okay, so it was probably one of our top 5 events.
Okay.
Like the energy in the room, the vibe, like everybody, I think, was really willing to share and collaborate. And then it was like super sexy. I don't want to be superficial, but like really attractive people came out
Right,
on Thursday. Like, I don't know if y'all got together and was like, look, we popping up. I was very excited about that. And people were like hooking up.
Right.
I know in certain cultures, hooking up means having sex, but in this case, they were just like getting together.
Right, and not to say that normally we have unattractive guests. You know what I mean? So just full disclaimer.
Right.
But I do think that part of what made this one a little bit more fun for us is here in Arizona, one of the biggest complaints that we'll hear from women, specifically Black women, is that where are the men at? Where are the eligible men coming out to events? And I always told people, like, what, you just got to give it time, right? Because it's one of those things where I've always found Black women to be early adopters. Black people as a whole are early adopters, but Black women specifically are always kind of leading the charge whenever it comes to any significant cultural movement, right? Always on the front line. So a lot of times Black women are the ones that are going to show up first to support something. They're the ones that recognize that something is dope first, right?
And we make it fly.
And you make it fly. Now, with the men, a lot of times women wanted me to go out and just pretty much lasso and wrangle men to come in. And I was always hesitant about that, right? Because my whole thing was, you have to be careful because you want the people that show up for them to want to be there and for it to feel organic, right? And I always felt that I know that men will start to trickle in. One thing I know about us, we're not gonna let y'all have too much fun without us before we start poking our heads in, like, man, what's going on up in here, And then all of a sudden, it really turns into this very collaborative, beautiful thing. And so I think that this was one of the more balanced crowds that we've had, which is letting us know that the branding, the name, the reputation is starting to kind of permeate this particular region. And, hopefully we can develop something very similar to what we developed in Chicago. So very much so, I thought we had a very good discussion. So it was a nice balance,
The men were vocal. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, they were.
I was enjoying their perspective because there was a moment where it was like, where are the men at? And the men were like, we're here, like we're outside. Like,
right.
Them,
yeah, they did. They did.
It was fun.
So it's funny you said that the men were vocal. We're not going to go through all of the clips, right? Because I also wanted to kind of pick your brain. I always write a lot of notes, right? So anytime that I'm doing these shows, I can have anywhere from 4 to 8 pages of notes. I mean, I'm talking bulleted, well thought out. I know I'm not going to go through all of it, but it just gives me kind of a blueprint to know how I want to navigate this conversation. If the room isn't giving me much over here, I already have something planned where I can kind of pivot. Because there was still so much meat left on the bones, there's a couple of these questions that I figured I would ask you, as well as some of the feedback, because we've tried to make the events as interactive as possible. So I have people ask a lot of anonymous questions. Okay. And one thing that I seldom get an opportunity to do during the event, but I figure I'll start doing it during the script, is I will actually tell what the anonymous feedback was. So, there's like surveys, I'll ask certain questions and people will give their feedback. And I'm like, you know what? We can actually share what the people were saying anonymously on the script, right? And then we could just kind of go off of it, go off of that. But I want to begin with this particular clip and I think it's relevant because it's something that I'm seeing go viral right now. But I'll just go ahead and play it, and then from there, we'll continue the conversation from that point.
Yeah. So my best friend, his dad is an old head from Jamaica, and he always would tell me, we tell both of us, like, whenever a woman says she's not going to do something for you, you got to add the with you at the end. It's silent, and there's no substitute for genuine desire.
Interesting. Hold on. Don't y'all kind of feel like that was loaded a little bit? Like, I need a little bit more context than that one, because that was kind of interesting. So can you expound on that one a little bit more?
Okay.
Like the with you part. Like I want some context of that. Like.
Okay, put it like this, right? So I was just talking to one of my men the other day, and apparently there's a thing where there's some women that are paying $1,000 to $1,500 to take a picture, just a picture with Chris Brown or whatever. And on one end, you're like, how that's supposed to work? But that same person that's doing that, let it be your birthday or something, and they'll be like, oh, I don't know, I can't do this, and I can't do that, I can't do that. So the with you is for silent. Oh, I ain't cooking for no man. No. I'm not cooking for you. The right man, I'm going to be in the kitchen making collard greens with neck bones and oxtails and curry goat or something. And you can flip it any other way. Yeah. That man said, I'm not going to buy you a diamond. No. Let some Rihanna Thames hybrid come and walk by him. He going to find a way to get some, you know what I mean? So the with you is silent. And he's an old head from Jamaica, Mandeville. So you know what he's talking about.
So what are your thoughts on that? Like, how did you feel about that? And those of you all that are watching, feel free to share your input on that also, right? Like, do you really think that it's really about you a lot of times, that it's not whether or not a man or a woman will do something, it's whether or not the man or woman would do something for you? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, we've talked about how, like, a certain approach from a man that you're attracted to is welcome, where it would be harassment or off-putting for someone you're not attracted to. And that's just reality. Like, I mean, obviously you don't want to be sexually harassing people just because you're an attractive person.
Right. Because it does happen.
It does. And that's unfortunate. Please don't do that. But no, it's true. There are men that I've been friends with or I put in the friend zone that I would never have, cooked for or spent for real money on or anything like that. But like a man that you're in love with or that you're like really attracted to, you do that for.
Okay.
And when it comes to the Chris Brown thing, I think that's a little hard though. To compare that, because for some people that feels like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I don't put that quite in the same box. Because, sometimes you have this idea with your partner that they'll be there forever. So like for your birthday, I mean, I spent $1,500 because I'm going to be with you forever. So I'll get you something nice at some point, or I can get you this watch for $300, and that's good too, right? Like sometimes mentally we feel like we'll have time. Whereas with like the Chris Brown situation, that's the one time he's coming to town. It's the one time I can get a picture where I can like really hug him.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't think that people had. No. I mean, but
that's not my guy.
So I know, right? Because so if it was Michael B, then all of a sudden, right? Okay, but it seems like one of the biggest issues that people were having with the Chris Brown issue, it wasn't even just the fact that they were taking the picture; it was the fact that the pictures looked a certain way. So like, what's your take on that in terms of whether or not it's appropriate or not? Because I feel like that's where the conversation is being hinged upon, is whether or not this is an appropriate way for someone to behave. How do you feel about that?
I don't know if the word appropriate fits me or our relationship. I do think it's based on the relationship. So number one, I wouldn't take a picture like that with someone other than my husband, because it feels like I'm not interested in anyone else touching me in that way. Because like some people, he got his hands on their butt, he doing the whole thing, and I'm just like, nah, that's too far for me. Some couples are open and they're more fluid with stuff like that. So for them, it's not that it's inappropriate. that's just not something I would spend my money on.
Okay.
So I think if you as a couple are not comfortable with that kind of thing, then you shouldn't do it. Single people, have at it. But yeah, I personally just wouldn't be interested in that. Like if I want a picture with my favorite celebrity, even if it was Michael B. Jordan, I wouldn't want him touching on me like that. Like, bro, first of all, I don't know you. Like
Right.
I can have a crush from afar, but you know, we can have a nice little, you know, it's great.
So in other words, the church hug
Right.
is what you want to do.
I get your essence. We good. That's it.
Okay. All right. That's safe. I mean, you know, on a personal level, it's you know, I've always I find this entire conversation to be like kind of unique one, but at the same time, I think because of the fact that we've seen many of these pictures before, and we know what the internet is nowadays.
Yeah.
We know that people are doing it to take the most absurd picture that they possibly can, right? And so there's a piece of it to me that feels a bit hyperbolic. Like it's not supposed to be taken seriously,
Right.
because of the fact that, like I saw one with him and a dude and they were both doing like this together or whatever, like touching fingers, you know what I mean? And it's like, no man is ever like, hey dude, let's take a picture. You just go up to one of your homies like, come on, let's go. You know, like you're doing that because I want to make this really something to remember. And the fact that Chris is extending himself
and willing
and willing to be this absurd with you.
Right.
It's like, okay, how ridiculous can we make this look? And so that's to me is when I'm like, okay, this is something that's more funny.
Right.
You know, like what's the most absurd thing that we can do more so than I feel disrespected and I have to break off the engagement. Like that to me feels a little.
I do a prison pose.
Prison pose would be hilarious also, right? But I mean, and at the same time, I can understand someone feeling like it's inappropriate. But I guess really what it comes down to is if you chose to end said relationship as a result of that, there was probably a couple of other things that was happening. And that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Like maybe you feel like it's a repeated sense of disrespect of what's happening. And now here we are into this space. And it's like, you know what? You keep doing this. You know what I mean? Like, is she the type of woman that's always taking advances from dudes? And, you know, you get to a point where you say to yourself, you know what? All right. And downplaying it. Like you're right. Gaslighting you, making it seem like you're the one that's just being jealous when she knows that she's always fawning for extracurricular attention, so to speak. So, you know, I can go with that, you know. I want to go into another segment, you know, but before I do, I asked a question to the audience, and I'm actually just now looking at these responses, which is interesting because it came down to 3 main ones, and I left this was open. This was not a multiple choice. This was people can write this in, and so automatically people selected one of 3 things. I asked to describe what freedom in relationships is using one word.
Oh, freedom in relationships using one word.
When you think about freedom in a relationship, like what, if you could describe what you think that embodies in one word, what would that be? Autonomy. Okay, expound on that.
I think knowing that I am who I am and my partner respecting I am who I am as I am, like you're not trying to put me in a box, or you have full trust in the person that I am, that gives me the freedom to be who I am. I've used this word a lot already, but I think like if you trust me enough, I will be the partner that you need me to be. So while you give me that freedom and autonomy to be myself, I'm still respectful of you. I'm respectful of our union. It still is freeing though. I don't feel like you are, like you have to check my location or my phone or do any of that. Like, you know, we're safe with each other. So that's
okay. That's good. If you're watching this, you know, same question to anyone that's watching, and feel free to just answer with one word. Again, the question is to describe what freedom in relationships is using one word. Now, what the people said, 16% said agreement.
okay.
which that's surprising. I would have liked a little bit of context with that. Another 16% said safety, which now that I can understand. I can understand safety feeling liberating, especially if the relationships that you've been in, you felt unsafe in. Then finally, the security that comes with that safety can be liberating. But 66% said transparency.
Ooh,
right.
I like that.
Yeah, I know. And that's, I'm kind of surprised by that one. Here's another question that I asked. Now, again, you guys, this, in the early stages leading up to the actual live show, people are coming in and they're just kind of like mingling and such and so forth. I'll have people fill out like an online anonymous survey just so I can get a good understanding of like what the pulse and the tone of the room is. And so these questions were answered by the actual attendees live that day, and they were completely anonymous. So the next question I ask is, in what ways do people get trapped by a relationship? So I'll have you answer that question. How do you think people get trapped in a relationship?
I say time. Sometimes it's like, we've been together so long, I don't want to start over, regardless of how toxic it is, or just that you guys have grown apart, or you just don't fit any longer, or it's clearly hit a wall. I think people will kind of lean on that, or they've been through this with me all this time, or they stuck with me through this, and it's just like, yeah, but you don't fit together anymore. So I think sometimes people find themselves trapped because it's just obligation at that point.
Okay. So here's some of the answers from the audience. Not being honest with themselves about what they need and want. Not believing when a party shows you who they are the first time. Right?
That's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one.
Yeah.
Here's one. Staying for the kids.
Yes.
Ouch.
Don't do that.
Yeah, but I don't know though, right? Like that's a tricky one. That is tricky. Honestly a tricky one. And okay, so I know what you mean by like don't do that, but I guess it depends on how well you all will function independently.
Sure.
Because if splitting means that now we got two people that are struggling, and now this kid got to grow up you know what I mean? Like it's almost like okay, how do we make this work? Or is there a way where we can make this work where we are still able to co-parent and pool our resources, which is another benefit, of what marriage is on the level, and sharing that union. But I can understand though what staying for the kids is, because like there are times where it's toxic, and then you all being together just makes it even worse for the children, because now they get an opportunity to see an emotionally and sometimes physically abusive relationship. And so
right. And kids, especially when they're small, when we assume that they don't know very much, they're very aware that their parents do not vibe with each other. And even older, obviously they're more aware, but I think it's one of those things where, is it better for them to see you both just in this unhappy, obligatory situation, or somewhere else where you actually are happy doing your own thing? So unless it is something where it's going to be like super prohibitive, from a resource perspective, then you may have to weigh that. But coming from divorced parents, I always err on the side of don't do that. So.
Yeah, and I also think that it can be tricky too when one wants to stay and one wants to leave. That's when it gets toxic. Now, if they both want to leave, then go ahead, make your own way. But when one is like, I had this baby to keep you, okay, like that's when.
Now, don't do that. That I will stand on. Don't have no baby to keep.
Control and or manipulation from desires expressed. Okay. Okay. That one's kind of loaded.
What do you think that means?
You know what? So I'm gonna tell you where my mind went, and this is gonna be a little bit of like TMI, but I'm not gonna say their name.
Okay.
So I've got a friend. Yeah, this is TMI, y'all. So forgive me for this one. So I've got a friend whose significant other it has a very like healthy and borderline, I guess I should say rambunctious, because that's judgmental. But let's say he has a wide sexual palette in terms of the things that he wants to experiment with sexually. And one of the things that he wanted to do with her, she wasn't down with, right? And he was like really, really pressing it to the point where she was feeling like it was starting to kind of create a wedge in their relationship, where she kind of almost felt like, damn, I hope this is something that isn't going to eventually break us up. You know what I'm saying? And that was one of those situations where I was like, man, that's where it does get dicey, because, it's one thing. I mean, anytime you talk about sex in a relationship, as important as it is, there's so many caveats, right? Like there's the frequency, there's the timing of it, but then there's the actual acts. Like, what if someone is very explorative in that regard, and the things that they want to try, the things that they want to experiment with, is beyond your palate. It's almost like, okay, at that point, how do you all see eye to eye? Like someone either has to compromise or someone has to just go without. And it's like, and what does compromise look like? Because in this particular area, if that was something that she was standing on, all right, well then, do you all then experiment with inviting others into the relationship, like where this becomes more of a polyamorous type of a thing? So I'm wondering if that's where they were going from when they say control or manipulation, from desires expressed. Something about that word desires is made. And of course, we're reading into it, so I don't really know 100% what they meant by that. But, feeling guilty by choosing others, feeling guilty by choosing others over their own happiness, not being transparent about what they truly like, and not being their authentic self. That's pretty straightforward. They get trapped by financial convenience. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest right there. And that's what we were saying. Like, I mean, if we're both making, even if we're both 6-figure earners, low 6 figures, all right, together we're making 250. You know what I mean? Individually, like we could do a lot more with 250 than we could with 125. So I can understand how that can incline someone to be like, you know what, nah, because I like this house and I like the amenities of this world, of this neighborhood. I ain't got to see it that much. You know what I'm saying? And then assuming everyone is on the same page without intentional communication. Man, these are some good responses, by the way, too. I am actually impressed. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is I want to cue up the next clip, and this one. Okay, so just for transparency, all right, you're gonna hear a bit of language here, right? So this may be not suitable for work. It's not overly vulgar, but just know that I haven't had the full time to go in and edit each one of these clips because we just had the event a few days ago. It's not real bad. I just wanted to give you the heads up so that you all don't clutch your purses. You're also going to see a bit of a Maury cam, right? Because this has not been edited. So you're watching this camera kind of navigate through the room. But I wanted to give you all access to this particular segment because there were a couple of comments that I thought was worthy of further exploration.
Right.
I'm not saying that I agree with the like and love scenario, but I don't know that y'all would know that she doesn't love you. I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm saying that women are very good at pretending to do shit or like shit or love shit. If we keeping it a buck, don't. If you need to fake some shit, you can do it. So she may seem like she loves you, and you guys can live in marital bliss.
Damn.
I'm not saying every woman.
So you basically talking like faking orgasms too, right? Like I'm gonna make you think that
I didn't even mention.
But I feel like that was the insinuation, though.
Nope.
Okay,
you said that. I didn't say that.
All right. Okay. So when we're talking about advice, one thing that I'm curious about is when you're receiving it, are you the type of individual that is it more credible because of who it comes from? Or is it that you are actually judging what you hear and then you're determining whether or not you're going to receive it, right? Like what makes the advice or the feedback credible is what I'm curious about. Can a random person come to you and be like, you know what, I've noticed this, and then in your mind you're like, you know what, that Yeah, that does make sense. Or are you someone that's like, man, I can't believe this dude said that shit and he making $40,000 a year. Dude, shut your ass up. What you need to be doing is worrying about your bills. You know, I want to know what gives the advice credence.
I have a comment back here.
Okay.
So kind of piggybacking on what you just said, my advice is you never listen to anyone who isn't doing better than you. It's as simple as that. So yeah, if someone's giving you marital advice or relationship advice, ask yourself, what do their relationships look like? What does their life look like? And if it isn't looking that great, then why would you take advice from anyone who isn't doing better than you?
You said it's clearly coming from a flawed source. Okay.
But you know what? I'm gonna challenge
I'm not taking financial advice from a homeless person.
Well, that kind of stuff I think is clear, but I do think someone doing better than you can be subjective. Cause like, okay, for instance, I'm a new mom and I have a cousin with like 5 kids and she is wild, but her kids are amazing. And so it's like, should I take parental advice from my wild cousin?
No.
That was rhetorical.
No. But I'm saying, what I'm saying is, while she may make bad decisions, what she is highly experienced
She's
in
very
parenting.
experienced. Exactly.
So in that regard, yes, you absolutely probably should.
They're also
Unless you're talking about feeding them hot Cheetos
I
and
was
shit.
going to
And then
say,
it's like,
there's
no,
a lot
we're
of
not doing
questionable
that.
decisions that she
Right.
makes. So,
All right, I'm
I
coming
get
right
it.
here.
And then I got one back.
Now, when we were talking about the love and like thing, I think something that people forget when it comes to relationship, we focus so much on meeting the right person, we forget about the right time. Because sometimes you'll meet the right person and it's just the wrong time in your life. You might be in a relationship you're trying to get out of or just got out of a bad relationship and you ain't trying to hear shit nobody's saying right now. You know what I mean? So, and the same thing is true for us guys. You know what I mean? We might be at a point where we were married for 5 years, we divorced, and we trying to fuck everything, you know, at least for the next 5 years, you know. So sometimes it's not just about meeting the right person. It's also about meeting the right person at the right time. And I think when that happens, the whole love like thing is not it's not a factor at all, because y'all both appreciate each other for who you are, what you are when you get together, versus meeting at the wrong time and just trying to make something work that ain't meant to work right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got a comment back here.
Okay. No, that's good though, and I do think that.
Okay, so that I probably should have given a little bit more context to that one before I set that one up. But I'll go ahead and ask this question here, because where I started the show is I wanted to know. I said, let's start with the space of giving. Let's start from a place of giving, and I wanted to know, what's a piece of advice that you were given that still rings true to this day, right? And so everyone was giving like their kind of anecdotal advice and the whole nine. And so the follow-up to that question was what I just asked, which is how you determine the value of said advice, right? Because I do notice that a lot of times people really are strongly considering who the source was, you know, before they will even pay attention to it, you know. And in many cases, I'm totally not that person, right? Because very intelligent people can say some very stupid things. And so my mind is always working and is always calculating. And there are times where I've had to learn this lesson a couple of times. I used to work at a nonprofit. It was a substance abuse treatment facility. And, you know, I was working with a lot of people that were in recovery. And when I first got there, you know, I was coming from like a corporate job. And so, you know, I'm in there with my suits on, and this was like a totally different opposite end of the spectrum. And admittedly, there probably was a bit of judgment that was going on in my head as it related to the types of individuals that was here. Because, you know, while drugs and alcohol is an equal opportunity destroyer, the majority of the people that we were servicing at this particular agency were individuals that did not have a lot of education in their background. You know, so we're talking about people sometimes with no high school diploma, barely GEDs. And so, you get accustomed to sometimes like maybe not seeing them as less than, but, I kind of had the shields up, almost like these people can't tell me nothing. That was more or less my mentality. And I'll never forget when it changed, when the minute I said, okay, I'll never do that again. I was sitting up and there was this one guy and he used to talk with a heavy, even though he's from Chicago, West Side, but even though he's from Chicago, he talked with a heavy Southern drawl and just didn't you use would be considered Kingsman English, right? And all I know, man, is that we got into one of the most compelling conversations about spirituality, altruism, and even some of the books that I was reading at that time. Come to find out, he was also reading them too. And I remember he was actually supposed to be going somewhere, and somehow we got hemmed up for a solid hour and a half, 2 hours just talking. And I said to myself, you know what? And I remember the hairs on my arms like raising up at certain points. And I was like, wow, this is actually one of the best conversations that I've had in a couple of years. And I just checked myself from that point forward. And I was like, I'll never do that again. I'll never judge an individual just based off of my suppositions. I really will try to judge them off the content of their character. Now, it's hard to get to that point sometimes, right? And so I'm not talking about the dude that's standing on the corner of State Street with the microphone telling everybody they going to hell, that I'm listening to him, just because he's saying it.
He's not always wrong.
And he's not always wrong. He's not, right? To be clear. But, I did start to learn that. And you know what? And let's be honest. And here's another moment, not to be controversial, but I think even being a Black man in America, there's so much that I've had to just release, where we always had a supposition that white people were always correct. I used to always use this analogy where I used to say, if there was a person you were dealing with, your parent and their health, and there were two doctors, two surgeons that came into the waiting room, and they both gave you conflicting prognosis, would you have been more inclined to believe what the Black doctor said or what the white doctor said? Now, I think that in recent years, I would say the last decade and some change, us as Black people, we've really grown a lot in this regard in terms of really understanding what it takes to even be considered elite in these areas. So now a lot of people will quickly say, oh no, the Black doctor, I will listen to what it is that he has to say or whatever. But it's almost like that stuff that the this guy that was at the Trump rally, I don't know if you heard about that. Okay, so remember when Trump recently just went to Detroit and he went to the Black church with all the white people? Yeah. But they said later on that day he left there and he went to this other rally that was hosted by this guy who's kind of like a white supremacist. Yeah. And he's the one that was on he went on camera talking about how he would feel funny if he saw a Black pilot, and he tried to blame it on the whole affirmative action thing or whatever. But that mentality that when you see a Black person in that type of position, there's always this supposition that an asterisk, and not only because of affirmative action, but just because even before that was baked into my thinking, it was just this belief that white people had the edge, that they went to the better schools, that they got better education. When we saw them on television, they always appeared to know stuff. They were the authority on situations or whatever. And many of us have had to unlearn that throughout the years as we've matured, but that was something that I also had to let go. Like this automatic placing people in these positions and giving them credence before they've validated to me or shown me that they deserve whatever pedestal that I was attempting to put them on.
Yes. I like that you're that way. And I appreciate that you tried to help me in this regard. And because this is the area, admittedly, that I have to grow in. Because sometimes the source, I can't get past the source. Like there was a few months ago, Candace Owens was on a tour, the Breakfast Club and right. A couple other spots. And she was making points that were legit. I couldn't care about it. Some people were like, well, what are your thoughts on this? And it's because it's her, because she's done so much damage, I felt like it doesn't matter what she says. She probably has legitimate statements. She's clearly an educated person. She's not an idiot. But I just felt like if she's saying anything, there's always some sort of motivation behind it. So for me, it is very much about the source, and I'm working on that because a broken clock can be right twice
See,
a day.
but now that I'll challenge, because I don't think that that's the same. In that regard, oftentimes I think you're right? Because I think what you're pointing out is an individual's hypocrisy, and you're also recognizing, like you said, that I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for, that they were sharing it for a reason that wasn't just them trying to share a truth. There's a word I'm looking for that just has evaded me in this moment, but you can always tell when someone's pandering, so to speak, to their particular audience. And so if in that moment you choose to just turn the volume down and not listen to anything that person has said because they've shown you that they aren't credible, no, that's different. I actually agree with that. I'm talking about, I'll give you an example of something that I have seen you do at times. And this is the area where I try to challenge you in, is when you accepted the position at the organization you're working with right now, and how there are times where you'll give other people a lot more credit for being sharper, being, like you always feel like you're behind the 8 ball. And I don't think you give yourself enough credit, and it's hilarious hearing the stories come from you about how your selling partners will always, give you all this praise and they think you're doing like the imposter syndrome. I think you sometimes can suffer from imposter syndrome, which we all do, right? I think that the best people do suffer from imposter syndrome, but that's where it comes from, because there's this group of individuals that they're so good at bullshitting, and I don't know if they know they're BSing or if they really do just believe it. And so therefore we believe them, right? But I do think that there are times where if you are one of those genuine, authentic people, you want to show up and you want to be 100. But it's almost like the same thing with like social media. Are you trying to base your real life happiness against someone else's made up happiness, right? Because everybody is happy and everybody's winning on social media, or so it looks, right? And if you're not careful, you could be making yourself unhappy because you think that everyone else is far outpacing you, when the reality of it is they were full of it from jump. You know what I'm saying? But when you look at them because of the way that they dress, because of say a degree or the presentation, there's this automatic assumption that they're up here and we're down here, right? And sometimes there's so much that we have to unlearn, in order to be able to like just really appreciate who we are and where we are. But that being said, next question. Oh, well, that particular question about, the advice that people were given. This was a piece of advice that someone had shared. And this is actually what led to the comment that Casey made at the last one that I thought was kind of funny.
So this one took me a minute to understand, but my mom told me, marry a man who loves you. Don't marry a man who you love. And that took me a second, but it made sense afterwards. A woman can grow to fall in love with a man, but a man has to love you from the beginning. And that took a minute.
So in this moment, I want to ask Casey, how does it feel being married to such an incredible, fantastic, intelligent man, right? Like with the camera on you, can you tell the world, okay?
That is so.
How did you get so lucky? Okay, the women want to know. They ain't asked it in the comments yet, but I know that's what y'all want to know. I know y'all want to know.
That ain't what y'all want to know. No.
But no, how do you feel about what she said though? Like, was there any credence to that? Because I have heard stuff like that before, right?
Yeah. I think there's some legitimacy to it. I think it depends on the man and where you guys are at. Like, so if you had to choose, like if you were in a situation where you had to choose to be with someone and the option is, I kind of like him, I think I could grow to like him, he really loves me, he fits me in this time, I think there's some validity to wanting to go in where he loves you more, because I do think it's harder for men to kind of flip that switch than women. Like, it's not that we're not physical creatures, or there's just certain things in women where we can grow to love someone for things outside of just, physical or certain things that you're bringing to the table. Whereas with men, I think there's certain things they need to see up front. And so I think there's some credence to that. But for me, I think that you should both equally love each other. I personally wouldn't know, just based on the way I am, I wouldn't know if I could grow into loving someone, especially if I wasn't like really attracted to them. I don't know that would ever change for me. For some women, that's not a big deal.
So she said that she believed that it's better when a woman likes a man.
Mm-hmm.
But if a man loves a woman, and I couldn't get it together at the point, because I was like, okay, I've heard something similar, but it felt like it was flipped. And I feel like Omar has said the opposite to me in a sense. And the reason he said so is because one thing that women like is to be dated. You all like to be courted.
Yeah.
That's a part of like. It's a function of a desire of, I want to be around you. I want to spend more time with you because I actually like you, right? Like, love is something different. And I do believe that real love is something that develops over time. You know what I'm saying? You can grow to love someone that you don't necessarily like very much all the time, right? In which case, it's like, yeah, I love them because they're family. I love them because of this shared experience that we have, but I don't necessarily like them to the point where I feel like courting them, or I feel like putting forth the effort and making them feel good on a daily basis. And so that's why I think I kind of challenge that a little bit, because I'm like, I feel like women require that more than men do. Men are kind of basic, and what we're searching for is more of the loyalty, more of the foundational stuff that we know comes from a woman's love, right? Whereas what it seems like women desire, they desire the effort. And that effort in most cases comes from who we like. That's where our attention, where our gaze is shooting from. So that's why I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Before it even gets to love, like the phrase that I've heard is, you need to be with someone who likes you more than you like them. Like,
right.
That was, be with a man who likes you more than you like them. And if you think about it from a perspective of like,
hey, who did you hear that from? Woman?
I don't even remember.
And that's so wild, because I've heard the opposite. That's what they say for men, right? They actually say that it is better if the woman is more into the man, because it's easier for you all to leave.
But I feel the opposite. Because if you think about it from a numbers game, or even like, let's just say black men and black women, where, with black women, we have the most education, we're making more money now. But at the same time, black men are more, I don't know if lauded is the right word, but like all races are attracted to black men. So like, you guys are kind of at the top of the food chain as far as what people are seeking out. And so in relationships that I've had, it's always felt like, not that they had one foot out the door, but at any point something could go wrong and they could leave. And I don't know if you guys have that similar experience, but it feels like if a man likes me more, then it's a little less of a concern that he's just gonna dip out, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. That's interesting that we've heard it.
Listen, so clearly it just comes down to the source, right? Right. I mean, this is one of those things. So we always ask if people have a question for the room, and there were some questions, and I tried to work one in, but I'm gonna ask you one now that did not get asked to the room, because I was like, this is red meat, but I'll ask it to you now. Why do men get intimidated by women of caliber? Go ahead. Of caliber. Go ahead and cancel. Cancel yourself.
Get canceled. Luckily, no one cares. Why do they get intimidated? I think typically because they either cannot live up to what they think the expectation is that the woman will have for that man. Like, if she makes a certain amount of money, she's going to expect him to either make that much or more. And maybe he's not in that financial space, or she has a certain expectation of being courted. And sometimes, and I can only speak for myself, but I was raised by Disney. Okay. So, you know, I expected to be swept off my feet. I wanted to be saved. You know, I had all these preconceived notions, which is silly, by the way, let's be clear. But I think sometimes men are expected to live up to this standard of, you know, the roses and the wine and dine, and a lot of some are like outdated customs too, like being picked up. Like at this point in time, I would never want someone picking me up from my house because I don't trust anyone. And so I think the expectation of that can be intimidating, especially if she comes in with that, you know, energy. Like, I'm gonna need you to do this, 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 and this. And it's just like, yo, I just wanted to take you for some ice cream and get to know you. And so I think that could be off-putting. But yeah, I don't know. That's a question for you. You're a dude. Answer it.
Oh no, I just wanted to see how you were going to squirm with this one. I so it is interesting, right? Because it's like I don't think that men get intimidated by women of caliber, but I think that what it is there's a lack of an alignment, essentially, right? And what I mean by that is we all come into these relationships with a set of expectations, you know, and sometimes I think that is where it may appear as if someone has been intimidated by someone, but the reality of it is if a man is intimidated by you, how do I put this? Because I don't like to dress these things up where it makes it sound like it's a woman's job to change who she is or what she's become to fit into a box or a mold to appease men. Not that I don't think that what a man desires isn't valuable, because I think it is, but I think that really what we're searching for in many cases is alignment, right? And I'm always one that believes that it's dangerous when you start to make too many adjustments that take you outside of who you are naturally, if you don't think that you can keep that up, right? Because if I have to become a different person in order to be with you, then what that means is every day I get up, I also have to don that mask, right? And how long can I continue to do that? Is that really a fulfilling relationship? Is that really something that's worth investing myself in if I have to be a different person in order to be with you? Then it's not me that's in the relationship. It's whatever this amalgamation or whatever this thing is that I've created. And then I'm always walking around on pins and needles trying to figure out what it is that you're looking for. So I'm never one that says that that's the route to go. But what I do think that people have to do is you have to, one, take ownership of who you are, but then two, you have to adjust whatever your expectations are, right? Because if you are a super A-type person, if you are this woman of caliber, and then you're also trying to date a man that you think is also on par with that, you have to understand that what you're exuding is what's considered masculine energy. It don't mean you're a man, but it means that you're exuding masculine energy. That man that also exudes masculine energy may not be looking for a woman that's also exuding masculine energy, right? Because that means that you all are going to do this more often, right? It's not going to be this, right? So it's like the masculine fits well with the feminine. So it doesn't mean that you have to all of a sudden soften yourself up to become some, soft damsel in distress. But what it does mean is that maybe you need to find a man that exudes more empathetic, feminine energy, right? You got to stop looking for the high power, high value man that's got all of these things or whatever, because that man doesn't actually fit with you in who you're going to have to become in order to get with him. Now, all of a sudden, you all are not aligned. So I always think that is where, it feels like they're intimidated by you, but now they're just not checking for you. Now they just don't want to sit up and argue with you all day. Like they're not looking for the competition, because we deal with that enough with other men, and you don't want the relationship that hopefully is supposed to be nurturing towards you to feel combative. Somebody has to be able to give. And there's nothing wrong if you are an A-type woman. I've met many of these women, right? You have to be comfortable with dealing with the other kind of man. And that don't mean that he's a punk. Just because he's an empathetic dude, just because he's a guy that's in touch with his emotions does not make him a punk, right? But you got to adjust what it is that you're looking for. And it may come with some financial expectations, right? Meaning that if you are dealing with the man that's the nurturer, maybe he doesn't have the high-powered job. Like, I mean, don't get with a bum, but, you know, maybe he can't afford all the trips and stuff that you want to go on. That's where the compromise comes in, right? Because understand that that's what the dude is doing. If the dude was the super masculine dude and he was earning X, Y, and Z, and he could afford to take a woman on a trip, he's going to take a woman on a trip if that's who he wants to spend his time with, right? If you aren't willing to make that kind of compromise, then yeah, it's going to become difficult, because you're essentially looking for a dude that wants another masculine energy type of, you know, and I'm not saying he's not out there. I'm just saying that that's probably what the individual that asked this question was looking for, right? Like, to say that someone is intimidated, I think you're making an assumption. I bet if you spoke to that man, he would tell you in a heartbeat, I'm not intimidated by you. That's just the lie that you tell yourself to massage your own ego, right? He's not intimidated by you. He's just not checking for you. And that's something that's different. And it doesn't mean that you got to change who you are to get him to check for you. What it means is that you need to find the people that are checking for you. That's the world that we live in today, right? With the algorithm being what it is, we need to get out of this space where we believe that who we are is trying to get everybody to like us. Nah, success in this new world is find the people that rock with you and build that community and nurture that community. It's not about trying to force square pegs into circle holes. It's about finding who likes what it is that you have to offer. Because thanks to technology and thanks to the fact that we can spread this information, they are out there and you can find them. And when you find them, you just got to figure out how to nurture that relationship and how to continue to build. Now, real quick question, Casey, because this is one I think will be fun for you. What television relationship was and is most ideal for you, and why?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Television relationship, I think Cliff and Claire Huxtable.
Oh, that was easy.
I know.
Now, I was hoping you was going to say Marge and Homer. No, I'm joking.
No, hold on. Let me think of someone current. But Cliff and Claire Huxtable for now. If you have something else to say, go for it. But I kind of want to think on this.
Pam and Jim from The Office.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I can't even believe. See, you missed that
Well,
one.
see, I mean, I love them, but like Pam got real clingy at the end. I mean, I understood her positioning, especially with two little kids, but yeah, she was kind of getting on my nerves at the end.
Okay, so these were the responses from the crowd.
Okay.
Beth and Randall, because they went through real life challenges and worked through them together.
Who are they?
Apparently from This Is Us, because a few people said this.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't watch This Is Us, but that was.
I heard it was a really good show.
Yeah, I know. People say don't watch it unless you feel like crying, you know, and I don't be feeling like crying. So we'll get there later. Right. But yeah, Claire and Cliff Huxtable was another one that was very popular. And that was the easy one. That was the layup. I just wanted to see who you was going to come up with, because, you know, you always come
just because like even, I know, right? Because even with their, I liked Phil and Claire Dunphy too from Modern Family. The dad was like, he was very emotional about stuff, but he was a really great dad, and he was a man still. She was a little more A-type. She was a little finicky, so I don't know if I'd be her in the situation, but they were fun. So.
Okay. Well, listen, you guys, you know, that is our time. Once again, I definitely want to thank you all for tuning in. You know, like I said, from show to show, we're going to always be doing something different. I want to thank you for being such a lovely co-host. You know, if I have not said so before, it has always been a pleasure sharing space with you, even inside the live show. You know, when people get an opportunity to show your personality, you know, that's always fun, because you're kind of like behind the scenes. You know, you're not the rah-rah. Yeah, a little bit, but you have your moments, and that's what's always fun, because for so long you kind of operate behind the scenes, because you're not the hey everybody look at me type of person, you know, but you come with so much value, and without question, there's no way I would have been able to do any of this without you. So thank you. And thank you for being my lovely co-host for this evening. And we'll definitely do it again the next time that we have live-in babysitters, for the meantime. But you guys, once again, man, I want to thank you all for, tuning in and for just engaging. And listen, man, if you all have topic ideas, if you all ever even want to be a part of the show, hey, feel free to reach out. You can reach us on all the platforms. And if you all have not done so, I want you all to join the Inner Circle. Okay, this is a new thing that we're doing. We're circling the wagons, right? Because, it's time for us to continue to build. For those of y'all that don't know, we will be traveling soon, right? So the Tequila Tales very well may be coming to a city near you or your direct city. But the only way you're going to know about it, or the way you're going to know about it first, is if you join the circle. So how do you get to there? You just go to the website, www.thetequilatales.com. It's the first link that you'll see, join the circle. Just go ahead and fill out the information. And then that helps us to be able to stay in contact with you. It also lets us know where you're from, right? So when I see enough people join the circle in a particular area, that's when we're coming to that area. Full transparency, right? That's why I'm asking for your state, because we get a lot of people that's like, when y'all coming here? When y'all coming here? Well, I ain't coming there and 5 people show up to the show, right? So that just helps me understand where the interest lies, right? So if you want to stay tapped into all things Tequila Tales, go to www.thetequilatales.com and click on the link that says join the Inner Circle. And once again, you guys, thank you. And until the next time.